Welcome back. The Chicago police mishandled missing persons cases and it mostly affected black women and girls. This is according to a 2023 investigation by the nonprofit City Bureau and Invisible Institute groups. The series has now been recognized by the Scripps Howard Awards as a finalist in the category of regional investigative reporting. The awards are presented by EW Scripps, our parent company. Two of the journalists involved are Sarah Conway and Trina Reynolds-Tyler. Trina here with us in Atlanta. Sarah, I know you're in Chicago. Thank you both for taking the time to be with us today. Trina, I'll start with you. What went into uncovering this investigation? What sparked your interest in this?
Absolutely. So at the Invisible Institute, we primarily look at police misconduct records. I run a program called Beneath the Surface, which use machine learning to parse through underlying police misconduct records. We identified a cluster of complaints related to missing persons cases, instances where actually primarily black women complaining about the treatment by Chicago police when they attempted to report their loved one as missing. There was even an allegation of a premature closure of a missing persons case. Those were the breadcrumbs for the work that Sarah and I did together in this project.
I know you gathered a lot of breadcrumbs. I mean, you spoke to more than 40 people. Sarah, as we bring you in, what went into gathering all of this information?
Well, we were very thorough in collecting data sets from a variety of law enforcement entities. We collected a lot of data from the Chicago Police Department, the Cook County Sheriff's Department, which has its own missing persons project. We also looked at medical examiner death data, autopsy reports, and one of the most important parts of our reporting was talking to impacted families who in some cases are still searching for their loved ones, to understand how they were impacted by the policies and procedures of the Chicago Police Department, and in some cases where police mishandled or delayed the cases of their loved ones.
And we often hear the term unconscious bias, and that's something as we've, police have been looked at in many cities. When you look at this situation, was this a case of unconscious bias or was it something more than that?
There are so many underlying issues related to this, right? We have the issue of police accountability, whereas in the case of Sonia Rouse, and a detective on her case was actually on record violent against his own wife and child, and Sonia was a survivor of intimate partner violence. She is still missing today. That detective was so negligent in her case, lost so much evidence. But then there's also this, the treatment of criminalized people. There are often, what we've seen is that there are young folks and older too who are often survivors of violence, survivors of these underlying systemic issues in community, and police treat them as if they are offenders. And so, we find ourselves in a situation where officers are not taking cases seriously. We found 4 cases where Chicago police actually prematurely closed the case before the person was found, including 2 cases where these 2 black teenage girls were later found murdered. And so when we look at missing persons data, we see it's an issue that primarily impacts black people in Chicago, and specifically black girls in that human trafficking age range, 10 to 20 years old. As we talk about Diddy, right? So much happening in the society. And when we think about detection, right, these kinds of issues, we believe missing persons case is a signal, right? That something is going on. And what we've seen is that it's deeply connected to domestic violence, deeply connected to human trafficking, substance use abuse, and often, elected officials, Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson at some point said, right, these women, their lifestyles, etc. But regardless of anyone's lifestyle, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be looked for. And also that underlying assumption that these people are missing and don't want to be found, that they're not worthy of being looked for, it is something that deeply impacts, our ability to close a case and identify that this person is not actually a victim of a crime.
Sarah, for you, what do you hope that this work that you've uncovered, what impact do you hope that it has moving forward?
To go back to, Trina had mentioned there's underlying social issues that drive a lot of missingness. We hope that the investigation sheds light on how faulty police data makes systemic solutions harder to to identify. There's a lot of data that could be connected about, the issues that people are facing when they do go missing, such as domestic violence or gender-based violence or substance use disorder. And we're hoping that the investigation shows that oftentimes more investment in community, taking care of the underlying social issues is a way that we can make our society safer and also help families who are dealing with loved ones who go missing and sometimes are ultimately the victims of murder.
And Trina, I know we have just about 30 seconds left. What impact do you hope this has? How do you hope if the Chicago police, they read this story, that the impact it has on their work going forward?
So we're in the city of Chicago. So many people are fascinated with homicides, right? There's a sensationalization.
A lot of focus on it.
There is. When there should be focus on the kinds of things that come before a homicide occurs. And so the idea is that if folks are interested in more detection systems, if folks are interested in more violence prevention, then there should be a fight to actually hold police accountable for these folks who did these premature closures, but then also, a resource shift, resource redistribution so that impacted families can actually prevent these things from continuing to occur.
Well, this is such important work. Trina, Reynolds-Tyler, Sarah Conway, I can't thank you both enough for coming on Morning Rush and being with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that will do it for us here on Morning Rush this morning.